There are countless arguments raging throughout the country over the rise in tuition fees. Many of them have been televised, prominently the protests in London. However, stepping back from that emotionally charged scenario, let's think about this rationally. The previous Labour government had a rather spendthrift ideology which led this country into a recession, resulting in the current government having to make cuts to pay off the debt. These ranged from local councils to businesses to all sorts of areas. Unfortunately, university education was hit heavily with an 80% cut, as the government can no longer substantially aid students through the process. Okay, now that we have a brief history behind current events, we can set out with a more balanced view. On average, it costs £11,000 to educate one student per year, factoring in teaching costs, lab equipment, etc. Universities couldn't bridge the gap. The government can no longer afford to bridge the gap. Now, the only logical conclusion is for the families to bridge the gap. The immediate downside to this is the financial burden is now on the family, adding more stress and pressure on putting their child through higher education. However, taking the present moment in time, we cannot argue that this is unnecessary. Currently, there is no other means of funding, therefore the rise in fees is justified. Stepping back into the personal, emotional side of the decision, those families already struggling to meet the demand of the current cost of university education will be further burdened with gathering the necessary funds to meet the future cost. This is most likely to result in a drop in students applying to university purely because they cannot afford it. Critics have claimed that the increase in fees will result in an uneducated England and Wales, as the current proportion of students going to university, which is around 40%, will significantly fall. However, do not despair, there is always a positive outcome. In just a few years' time, degrees will be more highly valued and graduates will be in high demand from employers. Furthermore, the government is creating 10,000 new apprenticeships, which is a very good but very little known way of getting into employment outside of university. These will include accountancy, law, and many other high-end jobs. Further still, there is a window of opportunity for philanthropists to give grants to students now that the government isn't doing it for them, possibly resulting in guaranteed job places in their respective companies. What are your views?